long before there were towers of steel, before the written word, and before the rise of complex societies, there were primitive humans. These humans lived a simple life with a sky full of stars and danger lurking around every corner. And while we can only guess at the reasons behind their actions, what we do know with unfailing certainty is that they created art. Prehistoric art, originating from around 30,000 to 70,000 BCE, is likely the most important time in all of art's history, for it was at this time humans created the concept of recording the world around them in pictures. Caves with artwork have been found all over the world. However, the oldest and best known painted caves lie in southern France, like the Chauvet Caves, or the cave at Lascaux being the most famous. It was more than 17,000 years ago when prehistoric painters placed a finger or a tool to the cave walls and began painting animals. The main chamber at Lascaux is a very large and open area nicknamed the Hall of the Bulls. Interestingly enough, the hall is far from the cave entrance, and the paintings could only have been seen with the flickering light of a torch or primitive lamp. Bulls and horses, the most common animals seen on the walls, were not a diet staple, leaving the reasons behind their depiction and mystery lost to time. What we can understand, however, is the method by which the art was created. While the wall looks like a herd of animals rushing past, a closer inspection reveals differences in technique, such as colored silhouettes versus outline drawings, suggesting different painters created the images at different times, possibly even over the course of generations. What did remain consistent, however, was the viewpoint by which they all depicted the animals. All prehistoric representations of animals for thousands of years depict beasts in profile. The only view of an animal showing head, body, tail, and all four legs. It was sort of an art movement at the dawn of humanity. I mean, that's incredible. Can you imagine being a cave person at the time when these walls were relatively new? Perhaps the tribe consisted of many painters, and there was an initiation ritual involving painting an animal. Perhaps they hid in caves for a long time and wanted to have a piece of the outside world close by, like an artificial window. If you've ever seen the remake of Planet of the Apes, it could be like Caesar drawing his window. Whatever the case, it's still quite impressive. Some of the earliest artworks discovered come from Africa, the oldest being portable objects. One of the most famous locations for ancient African art is the Apollo 11 caves in Namibia. Most of their subjects were also animals in profile. During the Paleolithic period of cave paintings, we can look to the caves of Altamira. These are the caves Picasso visited, and after visiting, famously may have said, "In 15,000 years, we have invented nothing. After Altamira, all is decadence." The caves of Altamira are several hundred feet long and full of mineral deposits like stalactites and stalagmites. The 10 to 20,000 year old paintings themselves were found far removed from the cave mouths where early humans slept. To illuminate the surfaces, they would use stone lamps filled with marrow or fat with a wick, perhaps of moss. For drawing, they would use chunks of red and yellow ochre. For painting, they ground those ochres into dust and mixed it with water before applying. Analysis of the paints showed several different minerals, suggesting a technical sophistication unexpected of early peoples. Large, flat stones made palettes with brushes crafted from reeds, bristles, or twigs. They may have used a blowpipe of reeds or hollow bones to spray pigments on out-of-reach surfaces. To reach some surfaces, they also used natural ledges, or in some cases even scaffolding, Some holes in the stone suggest perhaps a scaffold made of saplings lashed together may have been used for the higher, hard-to-reach locations, showing once more how creative and clever humans can be. So keeping this ancient history in mind, I decided to approach this work with those techniques, doing my best to emulate ancient works. For those of you that don't know, likely most of you, this piece is part of what I have named the Puggy Project. Having met my favorite dog, being my friend's pug, I decided that I need a pug for myself. In order to do that, I want to sell paintings of pugs portrayed throughout different ages of art. Originally, I just wanted to do one series where I pugified classic works of art, but considering how much fun I had, I actually decided to revisit all the ages of art as a way of teaching me art history, but also infusing them with something I love, being pugs. All proceeds that may come from sales of these artworks will go to a pug savings account that is planned to be enough to support them for their entire lifespan. So that's basically what my Puggy project is. And now, with that out of the way, let me actually talk about the piece itself. So, originally I was going to write either an alternate history story where pugs, who somehow existed in ancient times, why not, gain the massive intelligence spike instead of humans, and then they would, in this fictional world, go on to create these works. My other idea was having a post-apocalyptic story where pugs were mutated after the fall of man, and then went about restarting history and civilization. But given the format of YouTube and based on my earlier attempts at this sort of same storytelling thing, it doesn't seem like telling a fictional story while painting is all that appealing to people, and also I'm just not that great at it. So instead, I decided facts about the time period along with the process of making the piece is just as good. So as far as the story of the piece goes, I just like the idea of this great pug hunt, which is the name of the piece. And I have it where if pugs did, have either of these backstories behind them where they're the ones painting these arts, then in this case they would be depicting the young pug chasing wildebeests, as we might see humans doing in very select cave paintings. So approaching this piece was rather fascinating to me. When I was first learning how to make art, I came across a video by, I'm probably going to mispronounce her name, but Yona Jinton, and who showed how she went into her incredible, basically national park backyard, or forest, I should just say, and grabbed natural elements to make paints. So years later, thanks to that video, I finally tried it for myself and literally went into my backyard, grabbed dirt, and tried to grind it into nothing. Grinding dirt and eggshell and charcoal is not as easy as it might seem, admittedly. Well, okay, the charcoal was easy since it didn't need to be grinded to perfection, but the other stuff was quite difficult, as I could never seem to get it ground enough. And even the charcoal, while it was workable, it was too messy, so I just ended up using a regular charcoal stick that you can get at Michael's. But my head kept thinking of that scene in Iron Man.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
How ancient people, how could they do this? I couldn't really figure it out. They had nothing. But I do understand, though, that they made tools for this sort of thing and probably had very refined processes like grinding, then weakening the material with water over several days, and then letting it dry out, then grinding it again with a better tool than a simple mortar and pestle, or at least something to that effect. Still, since it was my first attempt, I thought perhaps what I had done was enough. I kind of just wing it a lot of the times and see what happens. So, according to that video, I only need to add acrylic medium to make it paint. Paint, at the end of the day, really is just medium and pigments. and if acrylic or a water-based one, add water. So I threw all these 3 ingredients in and then got to work on the canvas. And I must say, this process was the most out of my element experience ever. I was not the kid who played with dirts. I never really enjoyed the experience of getting dirty because there's always an extensive, time-consuming cleaning process afterwards. My pastimes were video games, TV, books, hanging out with my friends, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Pokemon games, really like anything else around. Sports were the only time I would get dirty, and that at least was like scheduled on a weekend or when I was in athletic clothing meant to be dirtied, So, needless to say, actively grabbing dirt, mixing it, painting with it, allowing the dust to go everywhere and get on me just felt weird. Like the child that I never had. Seeing that dirt become something was also pretty crazy to see. Like applying it to the canvas, I could see how fragile and thin the colors were. Basically just enough to tone the canvas like a glaze, but not so transparent that it could be wiped away with ease. It was actually really perfect for the cave wall effect I was going for. I looked up a lot of screenshots for how the colors looked in many of the cave walls and really wanted to capture the color, while also making the canvas itself just kind of look like a cave wall, sort of 3D. And remember, cave people did not have access to Michaels, so they really shouldn't be painting on canvases. The charcoal I found was the easiest to work with since of course it was. Like I said, rather than use the messy charcoal I had got prior, a couple days prior from a family barbecue, I cheated and just used a charcoal stick. And my hands were stained pretty black, like blacker than my already black skin. So I was like, that was messy, but it's part of the process. One of the things I enjoyed the most about this piece, besides playing with dirt, was just the sort of hippy-dippy connectedness I felt with the ancient peoples. When I was adding the reddish-orange hues around the upper bend, it really felt like I could see this space in real life. Like, I could see the flow of where all the pugs would go on this hunt, and what time of day it was. I could see the three-dimensionality, even though the figures would basically be stick figures in profile. It really was a new way of looking at it that I just wasn't really prepared to see. And I do wonder if that's how ancient people still saw these, they could see the sort of 3D space in their head as they put these figures down. So, as I mentioned earlier, I originally intended to tell a story with this piece. I was going to move the candle through the painting as though I were discovering it in the ancient caves of old. And in line with that storytelling, just like when I write my characters in my books, I need to act them out and get into their headspace. So for this one, I only had candles to light the night, and I started finger painting. And I mean, theatrics aside, this felt so involved and really enjoyable to do. I got way into the zone. And much of it was allowing my intuition to take hold and guide my hand wherever it needed me to be. I just kept my references in mind when making the figures, but aside from that, I mostly drew with my fingers, occasionally switching to a paintbrush when needed, though, as my fingers are sort of fat, and I really did not want to mess up this piece, since I couldn't really erase a damn thing like I normally can with acrylics. So I did feel like a proper caveman doing this. So while we understand how they went about making art, these cave people, there is still the question of why. What compelled these early humans of limited resources and danger everywhere, what compelled them to do something as frivolous as painting? There are many theories about such, as the paintings could have been made for decoration. They could have been believed to hold magical properties by capturing the animal on a wall as a way of taming them. Some theories go so far as to say the early humans may have meant to portray animals as earlier ancestors or be a blessing upon herds to grow well to provide bountiful food later. Though with all these suggestions, all were debunked, and paleontologists admit that there's no real understanding for why any of it was created. I, however, think the answer is simpler than they made it out to be. I mean, when we really consider things, the human mind has been the same ever since these ancient times of making the cave paintings in the first place. So really, we should ask ourselves why we create paintings today. There are a host of reasons ranging from boredom, expression, communication, propaganda, rituals, etc. The same is probably true of ancient times. I think it is a common trap of humans to always look for a singular, simple reason why things are created or why we act, when in reality, things are complicated and can't be answered so simply. And that's fine. As long as we know why we create the art we create, that is enough. And now, on that note, without further ado, let's take a look at the finished piece. Thanks for watching.